you knew when we were practicing. It was very obvious, especially with my brother and the drums.
Right.
So it was just definitely, if you heard that in the Vincent house, you knew our little band that we never started.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we did, but did you, so you said you kind of wanted to get into songwriting in high school?
More kind of early college, probably like.
Okay.
I like the idea. I liked writing in high school, so songwriting seemed like a thing to do, but I didn't really start until maybe like the summer before I went to college. Summer between high school and college, and there was definitely some lessons learned in that too. Where like the first 3 or 4 songs I wrote were just taking the chords and the melody to a different song and writing new words for them.
I mean, that's one way to start.
It's a way to learn how it all fits together, but you can't exactly put out songs like that, right?
Yeah, that are the same thing, just different lyrics.
Yeah, right. There's actually a funny story that Johnny Cash, the song Folsom Prison Blues, is a direct ripoff of an old blues song called Crescent City Blues, and he just switched out not even all the words, just like half of them.
Wow, really?
So yeah, that's a fun I didn't learn. I used to love Johnny Cash. I still do, but like used to study his stuff religiously when I thought I could only sing songs that are this slow. I didn't know you could change the keys of songs. So I listened to a lot of Johnny Cash and would study him and stuff. And then I heard that in a documentary, just mentioned offhand, and then I looked up the song, and it's like, no, like half the lines in that song are pretty similar to Folsom Prison Blues. And I guess at a certain point,
crazy.
He had to pay out the original songwriter. Like,
really?
Went to court and everything because, Johnny Cash made a whole career off that song.
Yeah.
And, playing it every night all over the world. And, meanwhile, it's directly lifted from a song nobody's heard of.
That's crazy.
So
that happens, I feel like, a lot. It's not like super common, but
you go back 70 years. When
someone just comes, even without
hearing
it, you just hear, you just think of a melody, and that could be someone else's melody that they came up.
Mean, to this day, if I'm writing songs and there's another song stuck in my head, it becomes like an active mental effort I have to make to not write the song to that melody or to even like that cadence of the words. Like sometimes the worst thing to do for me is writing a song when I have another song in my head, or if I've been listening to a lot of like one specific artist. Like it's obviously you need influences. Good to have influences and draw it from what you love and what you enjoy listening to. But sometimes if it's too present in your brain, you'll I don't want to say plagiarize, but you'll write it to that without thinking about it. Yeah.
Do it. Yeah. So as we're talking about like songwriting and like playing guitar, could you maybe play something that you've written?
Sure. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Let's see. I know you break the fourth wall. You guys told me what songs of mine you're going to play, so I won't play one of those. This is a song I wrote a couple of years ago about trying to make a living as a musician. It's in the old folk music tradition of a talking blues song, which is basically talking over chords while making jokes about a specific occupation. There's a joke I tell on stage where I say, because it's everybody's God-given right to gripe about their jobs, even guys like me that work 3 hours a night, 2 days a week. So this is the Talking Bar Band Blues. Now, friends, let me sit and learn you a pinch about hanging your life on a 1/4 inch. Guitar cable running through a dusty old mixing board. You might think it's fun working late nights, drinking on a job, and sometimes you're right. But the financial situation of this particular occupation, I will warn. Besides, I'm having enough trouble getting booked myself lately. See, it doesn't really matter how good y'all are. You'll sooner win the lottery than be a big star. You mostly wind up playing in smoky old bars for about $75 a man. $100 if the place is good. They'll say, we'd pay you more if we could, but the karaoke fella draws a bigger crowd than your band. No, ma'am, we don't play Tennessee whiskey. It's a brotherhood here on the local scene. Some brothers are sweet, some brothers are mean. Some would kill for 'em, others wouldn't spit 'em if I were on fire. Some got these cushy weekly gigs, some got wives, some got kids. Some that undercut all the rest of us if it meant getting hired. Yes, ma'am, for $10 in the tip jar, we'll play wagon wheel. For $20 in the tip jar, we'll play wagon wheel and pretend like we like it. This is the verse where I could get in trouble with my auto self-censoring. We'll see if something gets past the filter. Now I'll speak on some of the perks, because the benefits are different than your fine work. Sometimes you get free food or drink, sometimes free to F off if you want a glass of water. You musicians must get action all the time. Oh, brother, let me blow your mind. Usually the only way it gets screwed is when the bar doesn't want to pay you what they oughta. But my buddy's got this story about a pig in a mop closet. It'll blow your mind, yes it will. Now don't let me discourage or sway you. If you want to play music, it's the way God made you. But if you're gonna gig, for the love of Christ, you better charge what you're worth. I don't mean to seem an overt cynic, but this rock and roll business ain't no picnic. But it's led to some of the best times and friends that I've had in my years on earth. And Jack Whittle. There we go, the Talking Bar Band Blues.
I loved that.
Thank you.
That was so funny.
Thank you. Yeah,
that was so good.
Yeah, you gotta have the sweet with the salty, right? So it's like, I love sad songs, but sometimes you need something that's just kind of stupid to break the tape.
Yeah.
You know, that one's gonna be on a, I guess not quite an announcement, but that one's gonna be on the album we're working on. That we recorded that one because it felt like we needed a very acoustic forward tune, you know, and it's also a lot of heavy stuff and a lot of loud stuff, so it's, you know, needed something kind of break the ice. But yeah, I love that song. That one always makes people laugh.
That's crazy because like I'm like a theater kid, so like obviously like memorizing like lyrics and lines and stuff, like that's what I have to do, but like that was like a lot.
Thank
so
you.
it was like, I don't know how you memorize that, but props to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of musicians have different skill sets, you know. I know a lot of extremely talented musicians. My actual musicianship can be a little rudimentary, at least in certain respects, but I've always been good at memorizing words, you know, and keeping in my head and finding the right places to put the syllables and things like that. So yeah, that's a fun one because it keeps me limber, you know.
So you mentioned a new album coming out.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk about that for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been working on this album?
Ooh, coming up on 2 years.
2 years.
It's been a little bit, and it's a good chunk of my fault because, you know, myself and my band members, The Big Breakfast, and my producer, we're all full-time musicians, and, you know, to be a full-time musician in these parts, you gotta have multiple projects, you gotta be doing this and that, you know. We all lead pretty busy lives, so it's the initial recording, like for the drums and some of the instrumentation, was done over a 2-day period in the fall 2 years ago in 2022. And that's when we got a good chunk of like the background done, what you might call a scratch track, where it's all based on, because no matter what we wanted to put over it, we wanted the drums to feel like they were from a live take. So basically the drums from those recordings are going to be in the final album. Everything else is kind of being done over. But it's been a long process just because it's like making the time to get together, you know, with my producer and bass player Mark, and then, you know, getting the other parts from everybody else, and then, you know, mixing, and which is kind of where we're at now. He's about done with that, I believe, and then it's mastering, and then even after everything's done, everything could be done tomorrow, all the actual work on the album, but even then it's, you know, you got to put singles out, you have to promote it, you have to, you know, give yourself kind of a runway. So it's like, even if all the actual work was done tomorrow and it was ready to put out into the world, I still probably couldn't do it justice and without putting out until like August. You know, just like, especially because this is my first full album. I've done EPs and they've all been acoustic. I've done a couple singles with bigger instrumentation, but this is like the first project I've done where it's with my band and it's a full album on my songs. So it's like, you want to do the project justice, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't mind taking as long as it's taken, because it's better to take your time, make sure everything's right, than rush it out the door.
Yeah, and it just sound weird, or you
There's
notice something in like the final take where it's off.
Yeah. There's a line which I think about in regards to this from it's in regards to video game development, but it's from Shigeru Miyamoto, the guy who made up like Mario and Zelda and all that, and he said, "A delayed game is eventually good. A bad game is bad forever." You know, and that's a good way to look at it with projects. Is like, you know, if you got to take longer to make sure it's all good, that's okay, because it'll eventually be out, and hopefully people will eventually like it. Or just push something out the door, and it's not something you're proud of. You're not going to start being proud of it eventually, you know?
Right. You're just gonna be like, well, that was something that failed.
So I'm happy to take as long as it's going to take. So it's, you know, not ready to, you know, announce like a release date or anything like that. But we got one single we're getting ready to put out, and I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If I really tried, I probably could. But we have about a 30-second like a teaser type of thing.
Yeah.
So for you guys, we're gonna show you, because I mean, why wouldn't we? It's just really cool. So here's that teaser.
Looking like one of those.
That was cool. I like it.
Thank you. That's for my song Towns. I'm excited to get that out into the world. Excited for people to see the music video. Really proud of the music video. That's a song I've played for a few years. You know, I wrote it maybe 3 years ago, something like that. And I didn't know how I liked it, but I like a lot of my stuff that doesn't necessarily go over well.
Yeah.
But I started realizing how much potential it had when I went down to Oklahoma to play some shows with the songwriter friend of mine, Matt Moran, who's a, you know, working musician, father, husband, and, you know, great songwriter. And I played that on the nights we played shows together, and he goes, "Hey man, you got that out on record?" I said, "No, you know, hopefully." He goes, "Yeah, you got to put that out there." And I was like, "Okay, well that's good. That's, you know, somebody kind of from my target demographic, which is other people who love sad songs." And then a few months later, I was on a podcast interview with my friend Jason Harrell, who actually plays fiddle on this song. He's a great fiddle player down in Texas. And I played that song live on the podcast, and the host was trying to like pass to him to comment on it. And he goes, "Oh man, that was great, wasn't it, Jason?" He's just, yeah, that was, wow. It's like,
just wow.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Like if I can make a grown man stop dead in his tracks, you know, because something just hits him in the chest so hard.
Yeah, he's at a loss for words.
That's when I know I got something. And then the song itself is it's kind of a story-driven song. So then that made me think like, well, okay, I need to do a music video for this, or at least I would like to, because I did one music video before for my song "Oh Reliable." That was on my second EP, and that was such a fun project. And same producer and video guy on this one, George Nix of Lakeshore Video, does a lot of great local video work. And yeah, we shot the video just over the course of an afternoon into an evening at Jack Whittle's house. And the actor in the video, the star, who also ended up being pretty much more of a producer of the video than me, is my friend Ian Gill, who's in the band Fresh Hops and Catman Dog, because he's such a creative individual and like has such a brain for storytelling. And, you know, it was also a different avenue for him. You know, he knew the kind of story I wanted to tell. So he would have ideas like, okay, so we should get a shot like this, that looks like this, you know. And so between my brain, Ian's brain, and George's brain, and all of his talent and great equipment, like we got a pretty good video. Like I can be very self-conscious and I can be my own biggest critic, but also when I get my hands on something good that's like a video or a song of mine that's something that's been done somewhere, it's like I'm the biggest mark for myself there. It's like
Yeah.
I'll play that I'll play it in the car and everything like that. And I was like, as soon as I got the final version of the video, I wanted to post it everywhere and have everybody look at it. It's like, no. You gotta tease it. You gotta promote it.
I gotta wait. I gotta wait.
Excited for it. So yeah, I'm really excited for folks to see the video and hear the song for Towns. Yeah.
That's so cool because I love watching music videos, especially if they're, oh my gosh, English, especially if there's like a really good story to the song, and to see it like being like played out, like it's just really cool.
Yeah, it adds a new dimension to the song for sure. And like there's even like the song itself is very heavy, but there's a few moments of levity in the video, just because it's like when you're working with people and you're having a good time, little bits of humor and stuff pop out, and it's like it's not something you like. At least the way we saw it was like, well, we can leave some of that stuff in, turn against the or lean into the skid, whatever the metaphor
Yeah,
is.
because we're working on music videos in class right now, and I was able to film a little bit last night, and I was looking through my footage, and I was like, see, like that's like I laughed a little bit, like I could keep that in there if I wanted to, like you can catch little moments that you didn't think that you needed,
right? That
kind of make the video.
Yeah,
it's really
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah, it's little moments of levity and stuff like that. Yeah, or even just things that happen organically that you weren't planning on end up being some of your favorite things.
It just happens. Yeah. I love music videos. They're such a big part.
It's not a lot of folks do it, especially like at the level where I'm at as a regional artist, mostly playing in bars, stuff like that, just because like to do good video work, and I'm sure there's a preaching to the choir here for a production class, good video work, good audio work deserves good pay. Like you got to pay people what they're worth and what their time is worth and what their equipment is worth. And so it can be prohibitively expensive. I don't want to get into the numbers here, but it's like it definitely took a calculated decision to like, okay, is it worth, getting George, who does corporate videos and wedding videos and things like that, is worth getting him out for a day with all his equipment to do this, because on the back end, at a certain point, we're going to have to compensate him for what he's worth. And, it's like you're looking at that with like the budget for the whole project. And like, that's where doing this, some of the biggest headaches come from, is trying to make it make sense as essentially a one-person business.
Yeah.
It's the least fun part. It's the part where it really feels like a job.
Yeah. So talking about you having an album coming out pretty soon,
soonish.
Soonish. Yeah. You write music. So I wanted to ask, like, do you have like a specific like process you go to when you write music, or does it just?
It varies. Like I get asked a question a lot of like, oh, what comes first, words or music? And I understand where that question comes from and where that thought process comes from. But usually it's kind of paired, right? Or at least from a pretty early process it is. Because I'm a very words-driven guy, so I'll think of like a lyrical hook or an idea for a song or a story I want to tell first. But then as soon as it starts formulating, there's usually some sort of rhythm or cadence or even a slight melody to go with it, So it's like it's not as structured as like, this is me doing the words part, this is me doing the music part. Usually it kind of it's more intertwined. And so it comes about just from, it can come about from a turn of phrase I have in my head, or a line I heard in a movie or something like that. I have a song that's going to be on the album called South of Mars, and the idea of that came from an old video of Macho Man Randy Savage talking. He has a line where he's doing an interview and he's all blustered. I'll spare you my Macho Man impersonation, but he says, "I've been in the danger zone east of the Pacific Ocean, west of London, England, south of Mars, and north of hell." And I said, "South of Mars, north of hell." That's a good line. Somebody used that, so that's a good line or a good hook can come from anywhere, or a song can come about from like. I play around every weekend pretty much, sometimes with my band, sometimes by myself. And it's like, okay, well, I want a song that's like here in my vocal range that has this kind of a groove, right? It's like, I need a fast song to, just because something to start off a set with. Or or oh, I need more of a laid back song, or like, oh, I like this kind of song. Like, I might as well try and write a song of this nature that's my own instead of doing a cover. You know, like, oh, I really like this kind of old country shuffle, and there's like 7 of them I could play, but I might as well have my own that I can play.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes it comes from a need that I'd like to fill. Other times it just comes from like, oh, that like just an idea that I feel like I got to get out, you know, or sometimes like just a strong emotion, if I'm really going through something, it depends. But songs come from all sorts of places, usually while I'm driving, which is a pain. But yeah, and I'd hear interviews with old songwriters. There's a story of one of my favorite songwriters, a guy named Guy Clark, who was a great Texas songwriter. He had the idea for one of his songs, a song called LA Freeway, while he was stuck in traffic in Los Angeles. So he had...
Nice.
So he, like, pulled over to the side of the road, had his wife get in the driver's seat, and then he wrote down the chorus idea with his wife's, like, eyeliner pen on a hamburger wrapper.
That's hilarious.
So these days it's easier just because, usually the phone's right there on the dash.
Yeah.
And you just hit voice memo. So there's a lot of my songs where it just started off as me tapping out the rhythm on the dashboard and singing it while I'm driving, which is not always not always the best idea. But, it's like if I don't get it down, if I don't get the core germ of an idea down, it's lost.
You'll lose it.
Yeah, it's the most frustrating thing in the world when you had a good idea, and then you're trying to circle back to it, and you're getting like 70% of the way there. Like, this is almost what I was thinking.
That's the worst thing.
But it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's terrible.
Generally, if I get a song idea, like, I need to get some part of it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were talking about COVID earlier and how it changed a lot of things in everyone's life. Did it affect your writing, like not being able to like play live and be around fans and people?
I think just it came about from it definitely made me miss my friends for the longest time.
Yeah.
I was doing live streams even at the time over at my friend Jack Whittle's house. A lot of musicians were doing live streams, but I lost like we can't go out to Finnegan's on Tuesday for the jam night and see everybody. Like, I can't go out to this open mic on a Sunday, and see all the regular crowd. So I think just it like similar to most folks' jobs, like you just miss the people that you're around, and that's what informed it. In terms of writing, I definitely had a lot more writing time around then. I can't quite pinpoint like a specific song I wrote during those days, but it was definitely felt like I had plenty of time to write, not enough time to actually go out and play. So then it's like when restrictions started loosening, and places started opening back up. It's like as soon as I got the opportunity to go play again, I was down for it. I had a residency for about a year coming out of COVID at a bar in Chicago called Lily's, and even then, especially Chicago had harsher COVID restrictions than we did, understandably, but for like 6 months out of that year, there was a big table in front of me with a big piece of plexiglass taped up in front of it, so that as I was singing and expectorating, like there was not like a barrier of protection.
Yeah.
But even then, it was so good to be able to get out in front of folks again. Because I love writing, I love singing, but the best feeling in the world is doing it for people and doing it with people you enjoy making music with. It's a line I say a lot that, like, especially, I do a variety of stuff. I do solo. Sometimes I'll play with just me and a lead guitar player. But my favorite nights when I get to play with my full band. And, I think of it a lot like when you're with your friends and you're making music you love and you just, like, the groove gets locked into your feet. And it almost doesn't matter if people are having a good time. But if they are, if the musicians are having a good time, the audience is probably having a good time.
Yeah.
And just there's a moment where it all locks in and you feel like you got something figured out nobody else does, right? Like, this is my job. I'm being paid to do this, and I'm here with my favorite people in the world, and I'm doing what I feel like I was meant here to do, and, God, this beat's working for a living. It's like it's worth, like, waking up and, sending 50 emails out to every bar in the Champaign area because I'd like to get out there and play, or the amount of times I have to stare at my own face when editing images and like making flyers and like, there's so much back end work, and it feels like that's the stuff you really should get paid for compared to going out and playing music, which I'd love to do just anyway.
Yeah.
So long-winded answer, but COVID made me appreciate the live performance aspect of it and the communal aspect of it even more than I did before.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. You weren't allowed to do anything.
Right.
So you mentioned a little bit about Jack Whittle, and we had him on last week. If you guys didn't see, you can go back and watch it. We had him on Tuesday of last week. We had him on, and we started talking about the live streams that you guys did and baking.
Yeah, it was so going back to COVID, it was every musician was suddenly doing live streams, because you had to. Like, you want to perform, you want to get a little bit of tip money coming in. And so we were searching for a gimmick because we needed something. So it was me and Jack and his brother and a couple of our friends sitting around a campfire going like, all right, well, what can we do? What's something we can do to make us stand out? Because these guys are doing live streams. These guys are doing live streams. And
something different?
Yeah, what's something different? And we happened upon the idea because I'd be one to, I'd be hanging out at Jack's house, maybe sometimes with some, in an altered state, shall we say, and I would I'd get up and start making banana bread. This has happened every now and then just because I would get hungry. And, it's like, well, some hot banana bread sounds really good. And so Jack, I forget who said it, was either Jack or his brother, said, it's like, well, make banana bread every week. And I said, it's like, that's fun. I don't know that I want to make the same thing every week. So then it became like, it wasn't just like, oh, we'll make banana bread and do a live stream. It was like, all right, I'll make a recipe. Like, generally, most of those were stuff I'd never actually made before. There was a few that I had, but most of those weeks was just like, oh, yeah, I'll try making a blueberry scone. Why not?
Might as well.
Yeah, and so the first part of live stream, and you go back and find these archives on Facebook, on my personal page, I believe, on my James Charles Gedda page, where we'd start off in the kitchen, and Jack would be filming me putting it together, making it, whatever, mixing all the ingredients. We'd put it in the oven, and then we would go play music for the time it took to be in the oven.
Yeah.
And then at the end, after we were done, we'd, pull it out of the oven, see how it looked, and, maybe have a bite on camera, and then just call it a night. And so that's what those live streams became, and I appreciate Jack letting me mess up his kitchen every week. But yeah, there were some fun times. Most of them turned out good. A few didn't. That's generally what people bring up as the couple times things got messed up. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and still to this day, I'll get people bringing up like, "Oh, when are you guys going to start baking again?"
Yeah, you guys, those of you who are listening or watching, whatever you're doing, you guys need to go and watch those because I watched a couple and they're hilarious. Also, question: when making peach cobbler, do I need to use like fresh peaches or like canned? Like, which one should I use?
Fresh peaches are best, but if you use canned peaches, make sure you drain the liquid out. That's what I'll say.
There's a video of their baking show and they're doing peach cobbler, and he did canned peaches and didn't drain like the syrup, and it didn't turned into
out. Peach soup with a little crust floating on top.
Oh my gosh!
It's so funny because you could go back and see it like just with it was like, all right, let's go see how it's looking. After we got done playing about 45 minutes of music, and we just dropped the oven door down, and just the weight of the oven door hitting the bottom shakes the oven enough and shakes the pan, and you can just see the crust floating on liquid. It's not attached to anything. So we end up basically having like peach soup, like a very sweet peach syrupy soup with, admittedly, a very tasty crust on top of it. But after, we each got a bowl, me, Jack, and his brother, and we were watching TV, so it was just like, well, the taste is there.
The texture, not so really much.
Good. Yeah. So yeah, for any potential bakers, if you get the idea to make peach cobbler,
if you're using canned peaches, drain them. Yeah. Also, there was another one I watched. measurements.
Yeah. You can use them. You don't have to.
So they weren't necessarily accurate 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, because it's also the aspect of doing it live. You know, it's like I have a lot of fun playing music and performing, but talking on camera and like that's not something I do. Let alone like making a recipe for the first time. So there was a lot of like, you know, I was just trying to get it over with.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all right, well, let's get the flour dumped out, you know, put it in there. And it's like, you know, you hear it a lot of cooking shows. Like, I love watching cooking shows and videos. It's like, well, you know, measure by weight. You know, put the flour in the measuring cup and you know, even it off
make
and
sure
put it on the scale and make sure, you know, you're looking for this many grams, not this much volume. That was like, no, we're going to pour, like, there's going to be like an extra inch of flour over this cup and we're dumping it all in. And by golly, we'll make it work.
Or it's like I saw one video, you were making like Chex Mix or something, and you were like, it was a cup, I think, and you put in, it was like half of the cup. And we were like, well, guess we know which one of that's his favorite and his non-favorite because he put a lot less than that one.
So Chex Mix, that's a recipe I used to make with my grandma a lot. You know, we homemade Chex Mix. I love bag Chex Mix, but just going through the little extra effort of like mixing all the ingredients yourself and making like a little, like it's basically a seasoning of like melted butter and garlic and, you know, seasoned salt and all that. You pour it over and you bake it and it comes out toasty and it's delicious. But yeah, it's definitely like, oh, we need a little bit more of the corn Chex. We'll do an extra half cup here. And like, the pretzels don't really absorb any flavor. So we'll do just like half of the amount of pretzels.
Let's do a little bit of those.
Yeah. So yeah, those days were fun, but it was definitely an aspect of live performing and presenting in a way that like I didn't care for. So you'll also hear me say in most of those live streams, because Jack Whittle's holding the camera and he's giving me a lot of grief. I'll say, well, next week, Jack, you can cook for him. He goes, no, that's okay.
You guys, you have to watch them if you haven't. They're so good.
And one of the funniest parts was like for a lot of those, the live audience was really only like a handful of people, some of our friends, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it would ebb and flow because, you know, just everybody was stuck at home. I was watching different things. But there's a friend of mine and Jack's, one of our biggest supporters of music, a woman named Chris Tozer. And every time when I'm doing this baking, you could see in the live comments, I was like, oh Lord. Oh no! Someone needs to get you guys a mixer.
Get a mixer, guys. Get a mixer.
Yeah. So it was good to be able to get out. And play
those
music
are so
again.
funny.
As funny as those days were, it was good to get back out and playing live in front of people after COVID loosened. I don't
Definitely,
because who knows when it actually ended, but yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to play a song really quick, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I just want to know kind of what the process was.
Okay.
So here is Never Play the Ryman.
Okay. Had a packed house of 7 at last night's show. My calendar for the next month's full of holes. I got $1 million voice, so I've been told. I won't be playing with the band for a little bit. They're making better money with their own gigs. All my other friends are buying houses and having kids. No, I'll never play the Ryman, I'll just sing for tips and drinks. I may never make the big time like my grandma used to think. And I may never play for thousands on some big old stage. But I'll be damned if I ever act my age. 'Cause I dream big while living small. Short on gigs, gotta make some calls. Lonely fail if I don't try it. A lonely live till I die. I'll only live till I die. Stephen Jude.
Got a girl who does me right more than wrong. Her loving makes a weak man feel strong. One of these days I'll put her in a song. Could you tell me where a fella might grab a beer, play guitar and sing and shed a tear? Maybe next year will be my year. No, I'll never play the rhyme, and I'll just sing for tips and drinks. I may never make the big time like my grandma used to think, and I may never play for thousands on some big old stage, but I'll be damned if I ever act my age. 'Cause I dream big while living small, short on gigs, gotta make some calls. Lonely fail if I don't try. Lonely live till I die. I'll only live till I die.
I feel good about that one.
That was Never Play the Ryman. So just like walk me through like the song. Like,
yeah, so for those that don't know, the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee, it's, people call it the Mother Church of country music because it was an old church, and then they started hosting the Grand Ole Opry there in, I believe, the 20s, the 1920s, and, you know, it just became like the mecca for country musicians and for, you know, Appalachian music and hillbilly music and all that, and you know, the Grand Ole Opry was broadcast from there for decades and decades until they moved to where it is now, just down the highway. But, you know, they still do shows there all the time. And it's, I've never seen a show there, but it's such an atmospheric place where it's, you know, there's pews people sit in. You know, it's designed like an old church. There's stained glass windows at the top. And, you know, it's, I try to have realistic ambitions doing this for a living, because, you know, there's such a gulf between being a bar musician, like where I'm at, and I'm proud to be where I'm at, and being like a household name everybody's heard of playing stadiums all over the country. There's such a gulf between there that, like, of a lot of people who can make a good living playing to the audience they want, they can fill up a room in any market they want to, and, you know, but 99% of people who aren't like hardcore country music or Americana fans haven't heard of them. So I try and keep my expectations realistic in terms of just like finding my audience, try and make a living out of it. But, you know, it's an ambition I still carry with me. Like, man, it'd be cool to play even just one song at the Ryman, because, you know, it's where Hank Williams, it's where, you know, Roy Acuff, where a lot of, you know, just the founders of country music played. And it was around Christmas time, I forget what year, maybe like 2019 or something like that, maybe afterwards. But I was going through a breakup, and I was already in a bad place mentally. And then the Old Crow Medicine Show, who's a great like bluegrass / like string band, they put out a live album from the Ryman, and I was just listening to it while I was like going to the store to get some stuff for my mom for like Christmas prep. And it was just hearing the atmosphere. I think it was in particular, like, they were playing Wagon Wheel, which is an overplayed song these days, but, you know,
yeah.
After Darius Rucker covered it, you know, him and the Old Crow Medicine Show and Bob Dylan, who originally wrote the chorus to that song way back in the day, everybody laughed all the way to the bank. But that was like their big encore, and the whole audience is singing along. And there was just something about the atmosphere of it that hit me right in the stomach, and I was just like, I'm never going to get there. You know, like, what am I doing? Like I'm already old and tired, and nobody knows who I am, and what am I even doing this for? And it was you know, it was a pretty down place. And then, you know, I got home and I started writing from the perspective like, well, I'm never going to play the Ryman. But it's funny because it's not necessarily a sad song, because I ended up kind of writing myself out of that bad mood, because a lot of the song is kind of making peace with where I am musically. You know, it's yeah, even if I never get there, like, I'll be damned if I ever grow up. I'm not going to grow up still. I'm not going to go out there and get a real job. Like I do,
Yeah.
I do what I do. Like I'm proud to, you know, and maybe this is me seeing it from where I'm at now, you know, but it's like, I'm proud to play the music I play, and what audience I have it, you know, and always trying to get more. But, you know, it's still fun to do this. And I think that's what, like, the mindset I approach that song from now. You know, it's like, even if I never get to where I'd like to be, it's still pretty good to be where I'm at. So I think that's kind of where I come at that song from at this point. But it came about from pretty, you know, kind of a bad time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, that was like deep, but not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I loved it. So I wanted to ask, like, what your favorite movies are, because this is The Real Melody, and I do every week usually talk about movies and, like, the soundtracks with those movies. So I just wanted to know, like, what your favorite movies are.
So favorite movies for soundtrack are probably Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because, come on, that's...
I've heard of it. I've heard of it. I've never seen it. No, I've heard of it.
Don't watch the movie.
Well, I like it. So Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It's like it's the Odyssey, but set in the South in like the 20s, right?
Okay.
And it's about these kind of con men who form like a string band, and you know, whatever. It's a very fun movie. It's not. I don't know that I call it great, but the soundtrack is great. And then the other one, which may be a pick out of left field, but I love both the movie and the soundtrack, but of Walk Hard, which is like a parody of I Walk the Line and
one.
Ray and all these music biopics, because it's a biopic of a musician that never existed named Dewey Cox, and it's played by John C. Reilly, who is known as a comedic actor, but he's an amazing singer. He's a very good performer, and like they hit so many different parts. Like, oh, this is his Bob Dylan song. This is his Roy Orbison song. This one, he's definitely trying to sound like Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
So those are my favorite movies for the soundtrack. Just favorite movie period might be The Prestige. I just love that movie.
I've heard of that one. I hear of a lot of movies, but I'm never able to like watch them, or like I don't have the time to watch them.
I hear
like
you.
to sit down.
There's so much stuff that I mean to watch or mean to listen to or mean to get around to.
Oh yeah,
but
all the
especially
time.
The Prestige. It's a Christopher Nolan movie about feuding magicians, but it's the movie's about 2.5 hours long. It's a whole thing.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
It's a long movie.
Yeah, but you know, if you're like Saturday afternoon where you got nothing to do, it's worth tracking down. It's
okay.
Good. Yeah.
It's crazy how like a soundtrack could really help a movie.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because like there's a movie, it's called Garden State. Have you heard of it?
I've watched it a long time ago.
It's one of my favorites. It's one of my papa's favorites.
It's Zach Braff, right? Am I thinking
of
that?
Is that his name?
The guy from Scrubs?
I can't. Yes, the guy from Scrubs.
Yeah,
I love that show. I'm a little bit of an older soul when it comes to stuff like that. But it's one of those movies that like it can start going down, and then like there's one scene, and then like the song in the background, and then you're hooked again.
Oh yeah.
So it gets you hooked again right when it needs to.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched it, I was just like, the whole time I was like, oh my god, this is so good.
Yeah, the right soundtrack can lift up a work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because, like, at first I was like, okay, like, it's good. I like the storyline, but I'm starting to get bored. And then there was a scene where he met the girl he ends up dating in the movie, and then I was like, and I'm hooked again.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. There's another music movie I really love. It's a more recent one. It's called Blaze. And it's about a under-celebrated singer-songwriter from, like, the 80s in Texas named Blaze Foley, who was kind of... It's a music movie about a guy who never made it, but it's about a real guy. And it's directed by Ethan Hawke, and he did an interesting thing where instead of hiring an actor to play a musician and you teach an actor to perform music, he hired a singer-songwriter who then learned how to act, who's built similarly to Blaze Foley. That. But it's a great movie. It's heartbreaking. The songs are incredible. They're given a budget of production that Blaze Foley's songs himself didn't often get. but it's great because it's, it's heartbreaking, and because it's about a guy who never made it in his own lifetime, wasn't really appreciated until afterwards. He was a peer of Townes Van Zandt, and the one of the central points of the movie is he's recording a live album. The live album's just at a bar, and the audience is kind of politely clapping along, and half of them are just waiting because Townes Van Zandt's supposed to show up. So it's like his big moment. It's all his money in the world, and it's worth tracking down. I'm not sure what service is on these days, but like that's a movie that will make me cry every time because it goes into like, well, how much there's this romanticism of sacrifice to make it as a musician or to make it as a creative. It's like, oh, it takes pushing away romantic relationships and family and all that, and it's like. And like doing stuff does take sacrifice, but there's a romanticism to it, especially with like heartbroken singer-songwriter types. And a point this movie makes is like, and I haven't thought about it, but it's kind of something I try and get at with my song Towns, is that like romanticizing that kind of heartbreak and that kind of sacrifice and the straining of relationships is part of the problem, right? It's not something to be celebrated. Like it is a cost, and real people that don't make the choice to do that, like your family and romantic partners and all that, they also feel the weight of it.
Yeah.
Because you want to chase your ambition. So that's a bit rambly, but yeah.
I love it. I love it.
The movie Blaze, worth tracking down. It's a great music movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look into that. I'll have to see what it's on. Because, you have to look up to see if it's on any streaming services now. You have to, like, search.
Yeah.
But, yeah, thank you for telling me your little movies that you love. I'll have to search them up.
For sure.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
I love talking to you.
Yeah.
Those of you who, I don't know if we've talked, I'm a senior, okay? So I'm leaving, and I am almost done with school. So next week will be my last show for The Real Melody. I know, Jake. I know. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Those of you who can't see Jake, he's crying. He's so sad. A tear. What? Yeah, it won't be my last show on the air. You'll still see me, but as The Real Melody, that will be the last episode, I guess, is what we call them. So thank you again so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it.
This was a lot of fun.
I will see you guys next week. Bye.